Good morning and welcome to the WellMed Charitable Foundation's Caregiver Teleconnection series. This morning we have a presentation, or this afternoon. I'm in San Diego, so it's still morning. We have a presentation by Dr. Jamie Huysman on the Emotional Intelligence Institute's take on caregiving through the lens of self-awareness. So Dr. Jamie, please tell us a little about yourself and head into your presentation.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. It's really one of my favorite times is to get together with caregivers. I am Dr. Jamie. Many of you may know me. Some of you may not. I'm a psychologist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a trauma therapist. So what you're going to hear is a lot of what we call trauma-informed words, which is literally the new psychology, if you will. And we're going to just make you aware of a new approach to, if you will, caregiving. My love for caregiving dates back to when I began the Lisa Gibbons Memory Foundation in 2002 with Lisa Gibbons, where we started to develop all psychosocial drop-in centers for caregivers around the country. We opened up in 10 cities. Lisa and I and geriatrician Dr. Rosemary Laird collaborated on a book called Take Your Oxygen First. And here we are. WellMed was the most wonderful philanthropic organization and saw that caregivers needed care and needed support. And after I left the foundation, I decided to come to work here. So today I'm the Chief Compassion Officer. Literally the words that we talk about today is what I talk about with our 30,000 plus employees who are professional caregivers. So I'm very fortunate to be here. I'm also very fortunate to work with Evelyn, who is an extraordinarily credible, wonderful social worker as well, and the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And today, like you mentioned, Evelyn, we're going to talk about an emotional intelligence initial concept, okay, which is called self-awareness. Now, we use the word self-awareness all the time, right? But we really don't know its value in caregiving. We don't know its value in terms of even WellMed and professional caregiving. But today we're going to understand just a little bit more and hopefully give you the road that you can continue on to develop it in your life. And yes, we use Daniel Goleman's work at the Emotional Intelligence Institute. He is a wonderful professor and psychologist who wrote a book on emotional intelligence. And we're bringing it to you today. And literally, it's that person staring there. But the need for it, especially for family caregiving, is off the charts. Because today, obviously, we provide $400 million of in-kind care, if you will. That's a huge amount. Family caregivers would stop today. Our whole healthcare system could collapse. Everybody says we have difficulty saying no. No is an actual full sentence, full stop. It's a boundary. We have a difficult time because these are our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters. And all of a sudden, hey, we may be the primary caregiver. It could be our partners, our wife, our husband, And then we always feel guilty about, taking a break, taking a respite, or literally, if you will, taking your oxygen first. So Evelyn, I may open this up at some point in time. It won't be we won't be breaching confidentiality, but as a part of emotional regulation, I'd love to get maybe our audience take for a couple of minutes. But right now, I'm very fortunate, Chief Compassion Officer for WellMed, to get our employees take. And when I talk to our employees at WellMed about self-awareness, we really agree on the fact that literally we're going through a lot of stuff, right? Family caregivers, you got, depression, anxiety, you have your own illnesses, you have your own world, you have your own work site, you have your own responsibilities, and bam, like a 2x4, you got to become a caregiver, right? Whether it's an acute, chronic, or terminal illness. Well, at WellMed, we realized that teaching self-awareness, especially through the Emotional Intelligence Institute, is really valuable because it really allows us to recognize how feelings affect people and their job performance. So our leaders are learning it. Our actual employees are learning it. We all have to work together and create psychological safety, but also self-awareness allows us to plan time carefully. It also allows us to get our work done well in advance, okay? Time management is a part of this too, in terms of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness also at WellMed allows us to be able to work, if you will, sometimes with a client. Now, listen, a patient of ours is just like a caree of yours, a loved one, right? Chronic, terminal, acute illnesses create fear, anxiety. So it enables our clinics and our staff to work better, maybe with clients who are going through that. And ultimately, as I often say, values are most critical thing when you're dealing with unhealthy situations, because values is what guide us. When any of you checked into my toxic abusive relationship series, I always say, values are the and garlic to the energy vampire. And if you don't get, your house in order in terms of learning self-awareness and emotional intelligence, the world could become a vampire, as Smashing Pumpkins' Billy Corgan said. So the mantra today is literally the title of the book that Lisa, myself, and Dr. Laird wrote. If you really, really want to understand this path of self-awareness and develop the skills, I have to get you in the mindset of taking your oxygen first. Okay. It's not something you're going to learn from a book, not my book either. Okay. It's going to be something you learn in your heart. But to get to our heart, the longest trip we take is from our heads to our heart. It's important for you to understand taking your oxygen first is critical. So when I named that book for, I Take Your Oxygen First, we didn't have a title until 3-4 years down the line as we were writing it. And then that stewardess came out when I was in Los Angeles, said that you needed to take the oxygen before the person next to you. Well, I'm an addiction counselor. I'm also a recovering codependent. And I said, no, caregivers aren't going to want to do that. No way. Okay, they're going to take, it and give it to their loved one. So that's when I called the Federal Aviation Association. They said, doctor, you've got 19 seconds of useful consciousness if you hit the ground, and many people do survive. And if you haven't taken it first, both of you will perish. So I want you to start remembering that, if nothing else. Of course, you can get the book, but I think my book doesn't have as much on Daniel Goleman's work as it should. So today is going to be a day when I hope you start incorporating this. So let's just start talking about who you are today, which mask is where actually self-awareness lies, because we all wear masks. And maybe you might have checked into my October Halloween presentation. It was all about wearing a mask, right? Well, the Japanese have a great way of looking at it, and I want to make sure you always understand that the first face you show to anybody, to the world, is one that's much further away, right? It's the image. It's really something which removed from the second face, because that second face you do show to your close friends and your family, right? But still, even to your close friends and your family, there's things you keep away from them for defense mechanism reasons. I'm a psychologist, and defense mechanisms work sometimes for good, but often they do cover the path to self-awareness, right? So the third phase is who I'm talking to today. If you're a family caregiver, you checked in today, it's wonderful. Okay, I'm preaching to the choir. But that also means that you're ready to, because the third phase is you never show anybody. It's really the truest reflection of who you are. It's the one when you wake up, look at yourself in the mirror and say, life ain't going the right way, okay? It's not my family, it's not my friend's issue, all right? It's not the world's issue, it's mine. And this is the time when we really need to forge the most intimate relationship in our life, which is with the third phase. So I know as a family caregiver, and I know as even at WellMed, professional caregiving, we all wear the FINE mask. Now, FINE is an acronym, because when I do a group, and I'm sure Evelyn does too, group therapy, we go around and get a feeling check-in. Excuse me. The feeling check-in, people get to real feelings. But there is always a group member that say, I'm fine. And I say, that's not a feeling. FINE is an acronym for freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Yeah, it is. It's a mask. Okay. I'm all right. I'm good. I'm great. I really don't want to talk to you is what I'm trying to say. I don't really want to get disclosive. I don't want to get vulnerable with you. I don't want to give you my emotion because I'm fine. I am. So please, thank you for asking, but let's move on down the road. That mask is one that I want you to start thinking about today. That mask is really what covers something which is very important, which is that third mask, the one that you look at yourself, okay? That mask is often what caregivers truly, truly wear. And we never really define why we wear it. Many of you may check in and realize I'm very neurologically driven as a psychologist. I felt that Sigmund Freud was fabulous. wonderful, created amazing theories and concepts that are very valid today, at least 60% of them. I thought he paved the way. Carl Jung was incredible in terms of really the collective and getting us to look at the shadow work and embracing ourselves, embracing the side we don't address. Rogers, Skinner, all of them were great. But today, the 1990s proved to us here in 2023 that on the backs of those fabulous founders, we now have a new science called the brain science. It's a neurological science. It means, how do we deal in the moment with our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn? Okay, that's a different deal than going to your therapist and finding out what my mom did at 10 years old. This is what's called really something we need to look at, because if you're wearing that mask, and we all do, okay, because I always say, even with my patients, when they ask, gosh, when am I going to take this mask finally off? You may never really take it off until, you fade to another lifetime. And even then we don't know. We just keep peeling the onion, if you will. But caregivers, okay, need to understand that you can't enjoy a good caregiving journey, a good caregiving relationship. You can enjoy any happy and healthy relationship with wearing a mask, okay? Even with a loved one who may have a chronic illness, even with a loved one who may have a neurological challenge with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, okay? It's not, there is sort of, and I'll get to the reality of the situation, but wearing a mask is basically covering up somebody's true self. And I think it's our true self that I'm going to talk about here with self-awareness. So understand really that if you really want to have a relationship with anybody, you got to understand why you have that mask. I'm okay, I'm fine, don't talk to me. Underlying the mask is the concept of childhood PTSD or complex PTSD. If you've tuned into me, you know that I am going to take this focus. I'm an advisory board member of the Polyvagal Institute, which is really, I'm very privileged to be there. It has people like Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, Dr. Stephen Porges. They are people who are skilled at now the new psychology, which is complex PTSD. Complex PTSD really is something that comes from childhood. It's Freud was right. During the stage of development was the narcissistic stage of development, which we all go through. Without getting too deep into the clinical weeds, it's through that stage. If you don't have a healthy primary caregiver, you don't have fair, consistent, available parenting, you don't feel safe as a child, things will happen in that stage, okay? You won't feel, great. You don't feel the world is there for you. You don't feel totally protected. So you'll start feeling on guard all the time. You'll start seeing a negative world as a child. This is the most important time in our development of our lives, remembering that a child has a blank slate, as John Locke would say, tabula rasa. Blank slate is that's painted on, right? So the parents paint, if you will, the attitudes, the habits, the feelings, all this onto the child. Now, if the parents themselves aren't really, skilled, if you will, in parenting, or going through a lot of issues, or are fighting, or their world's not safe around them, the child's going to pick this up, and it's going to turn into what we call a trauma response. And the trauma response stays with us all of our lives. In psychology, we can change it, because our theory is that you're doomed to recreate your dramas and traumas of childhood until you intervene on them, okay? Until you intervene on them. So today, the first aspect of really the Emotional Intelligence Institute of self-awareness is what I'm going to ask you to start realizing there's hope, okay, in intervening. I don't care what age you are. I have clients that are 70, 80, 90 years old. We can start retraining our brain, but you're going to have to understand that this is all about trauma, which is all about our nervous system. Okay, I don't get too deep, but trauma is not necessarily what happens to you. Okay, I work with cops, firemen, military, tragedy, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, trauma, things that change one's life, of course, in a moment's notice. I also work with people with complex trauma, which is childhood, which is the overall, I call death by 1,000 cuts. These two worlds come together in our nervous system. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens within you as a result of what happens to you. So, long-winded way of saying fight, flight, freeze is behind the mask. Okay. Our entire sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system is all tied in. As Evelyn and I were talking about, we're really talking about the body here. So caregiving's natural state when not in self-awareness, okay, not why this work is so important of Daniel Goleman's, it's in the fight, flight, freeze mode, okay? I don't blame you. I mean, I'm in the fight, flight, freeze a lot of times. It is our nervous system. It's our system of survival. It's when we're with people or things or situations that don't feel comfortable to us. We'll get into that walking on eggshells, right? That fight, flight, freeze is something I'm sure you relate to. Look, very briefly, we have three parts of our brain. Our prefrontal cortex is where the reasoning is, the common sense stuff, the thinking, problem solving place. But the limbic system is the emotional side. So we emotionally get overwhelmed. It shuts down our prefrontal cortex and kind of what we call the monkey mind or the brainstem takes over, the reactionary side. So self-awareness means we don't have to become reactionary. Fight is really being irritable. Okay, as a caregiver, I'm sure you know times like that. We feel it all the time. I do too. This is what emotional regulation is. That we're all human beings. There's ways to deal with fight. Flight is avoidance. You may be in a relationship with somebody who's, very toxic, and you'll just avoid them. You'll get anxiety inside. You'll stuff it. Freeze, think about it. It's like playing possum. So we kind of freeze up so our predator doesn't eat us. We numb, we detach. Freezing up could be, drinking. It could be drugging. It could be whatever, but we detach and we give up. This is what's under the mask. This is when we are not self-aware, okay? This is what's the automatic response of the brain. Now, I'm going to add one more for caregivers because this is really the most critical one, I think. And I'm using my own healing, my own recovery, and I'll always use it because it's easier. There's fight, flight, freeze, but a fabulous author and clinician, Pete Walker, talked about complex PTSD and came up with the fawn response. And I address the fawn response often in our book, but not this whole quadrant as much as I should, because again, this is evolving psychology. The fawn response is codependency. The fawn response was me coming out of a difficult childhood, becoming the hero child. The fawn response is not being able to say no, not having boundaries. The fawn response is being that hero, right? So let me recap with you really quickly before we move on here, because this is what's behind the mask. This is what prevents this concept of creating self-awareness. And this is what self-awareness is the medicine for, okay? In caregiving, we don't really grasp our neurological system. We don't grasp that we're exposed to trauma continuously as a child. And then we get afraid and anxious. We start taking care of our mom or dad or brother or sister. And all of a sudden the ghosts and goblins come out. So our trauma response is what? We confront the threat. Oh, that's not so good. We get angry. We rage. Okay. We become reactive. Okay. Or we run away from the threat. And that's anxiety, is panic. Or we freeze. We can shut down. Okay. We block the threat, but we just do that by numbness. Not good. Then the fawn response, which most of us can understand best, I think, is people pleasing, codependency, lack of boundaries. That's the one I identified with the most of my trauma responses. So I say complex PTSD is this, the definition of it is when the last 10 years of your life trigger the first 10 years, okay? And believe me, childhood trauma, without getting deep into it because we don't have the time, but I really, really want you just to take in the fact, and this is where Freud and Jung and actually Portia and Gabor all come together. Childhood trauma really happens at a young age. Our personalities, our brain development is impacted by an up and down parenting. Our behavior today is our mental health, even our health. If you look up ACE, Adverse Childhood Experience Studies by Kaiser Permanente, you're going to see that there's a huge impact of childhood trauma on our adults today, and today more than ever on caregiving. Okay, we can't just pass it off as codependency now. Okay, we did for years. John Bradshaw in his book The Family, even did a TV show, talked about the fawn response, and that's what I really want to key on today, because this is when we're totally not self-aware. We're in this sort of mode. I was in the family hero, My wife was a lost child. We may be enabling people's behavior. We were the mascot. We had to develop what's called compensatory behavior. Well, why is that? Real briefly, the child only wanted two things in life. That's it. The child wanted it to be authentic, to be able to cry, to be able to emote, to be able to feel without somebody putting it in the corner, spanking it, time outing it. It just wanted to be authentic. Or it wanted also a healthy, 100% safe connection with their primary caregiver. Now, most of us as a therapist didn't get all of that. Okay. Parenting was a challenging deal. It's even a challenging thing for me. So we come through with these wounds and we come out later caregiving. And sometimes when we go into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, we're not self-aware. So not self-aware is we're going to react, right? Not self-aware, we might as well have the robots taking care of us, right? That's it. A robot can do the non-self-aware deal, right? Not so good, not so good. It's clear, non-self-aware caregiver gets angry, gets irritable, right? A common emotional reaction to stress is anger. And it does. And you don't hurt yourself, forgive yourself, and love yourself. It's a natural sort of response. I'm talking about biological responses that really happen from the childhood place. What self-awareness is allows us to deal with this. I want to also tell you one more thing of why I think you tuned in and why I really thought that this was such an important part of emotional intelligence work by Goleman, is that we as caregivers have an inordinate amount of guilt, right? I have patients always come to me, but doc, I feel so guilty about this. I feel so guilty about that. Well, guess what? Guilt is correlated in our world of psychology with self-esteem. What does that mean? Well, guilt, quickly turns into regret, into self-pity. And the only way out of it is acceptance and forgiveness. And what do you have to accept? You have to accept yourself. You have to accept that you did the best you could. And in your acceptance, you also have to accept that you're a work in progress. But you have the answer. You have the answer to gain self-awareness. You have the answer to get out of the guilt, because guilt, if it's high, your self-esteem is usually low. And if guilt is low, usually I see caregiver self-esteem is high. So they're totally correlated. So the beauty of this work of embracing your sort of path here, self-awareness, is that it's an experiential path. And as you embrace it, believe me, your self-esteem will start rising fast and furiously. And the higher your self-esteem rises, the lower your guilt. Now, the truism about wearing the mask, the truism about a caregiver trying to manage everything around them, wearing the mask, their loved one, their doctor, their themselves, the kids, no time for themselves. Those neuro states I mentioned, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. The truism is it takes our energy away. Okay? Think of it as a film or a movie. And think of yourself as a director, right? And you have a big movie to do. The director's responsible for everything, right? The production, the green room, the actors, the producers, the set design. Wow, that's work. That's a lot of energy. Well, that's true when you're in fight, flight, freeze, okay? Your energy gets sapped. And as a caregiver, your energy gets sapped if you're actually wearing the mask, if you're not into a self-aware place. A person's energy can tell you more about them than their own words. When they come in my office, that was what I wanted you to see. I can hear from somebody, but my friends who know me, if my energy's low, knows exactly what I'm going through. So you as a caregiver right now have to really love and hold and support the energy, right? The energy is everything. So understand that mask will keep you away from it. So what's the biggest reason for you guys to be here now is to learn self-awareness. Daniel Goleman really had it right, okay? The biggest reason here is that self-awareness allows you to self-correct. Think about that. You don't have to be that robot. You don't have to be that reactive, angry person staring at that one screaming. No, and something happens, an incident, instead of going into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response, fawn, getting out of the codependency, self-awareness allows you to be accountable. Allows you to say, what is my role here? How can I meet this person halfway? How can I understand that the pain of that person across me who's screaming and ranting and raving at me, that's not about me, that literally it's about them. And maybe, I can be here and listen, but not take it personally. So the biggest reason you're here is that self-awareness literally allows you to self-correct. So this new path I'm asking you to find self-awareness is to retrain your brain, caregiver. You can do this, okay? You can do this. Retraining our brain, kind of reparenting ourselves, is taking that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response that saps us from energy, that has us wearing the mask and has us doing something about it. So self-awareness, okay, it's the building block of the next fundamental emotional intelligence, which is being able to guess what? Daniel says it best, shake off a bad mood. I bet you were looking for some deep quote. No, self-awareness is the building block of the next fundamental emotional intelligence, being able to shake off a bad mood. So if you're actually proactive, okay, if you're not in fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, we're going to always do this. Anybody tunes in, we do breath work at the end, because I think breath work is something human beings can do in a moment's notice. And family caregivers literally can reset their whole body. They can shake off a bad mood in less than 80 seconds if you keep practicing it. So believe me, breath work is also a product and a process and intervention for self-awareness, because this is about our body, right? It's about our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. It's about the mask. So let's take it from Daniel Goleman, who's the godfather of the Emotional Intelligence Institute. I'm just helping facilitate it. If your emotional abilities, caregiver, aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, and you can read every book in the world about it, you're never going to get very far in this caregiving space. Okay. That is why we come to you, and we hope to continue to come to you with emotional intelligence training. Daniel Goleman did it right. And so we're only going to take on the first quadrant in our conversation today. The self-awareness, the ability to recognize, understand your mood as a caregiver and emotions and drives, as well as their effect on others. So if you're angry, what's the effect on the other person? If you're listening and bearing witness, what's the effect on the other person? Okay. If you smile, okay. If you say a joke, okay. What is, because literally the quadrant is so true. If you actually are dealing with self-awareness, it can help you to figure out who you are in the relationship. We're going to handle all the rest of Daniel's work and all the awareness sort of quadrants. But today, I want you to start understanding his work through the lens of self-awareness. Self-awareness is dropping the mask and adopting yourself. Okay. Family caregiver, it's about authenticity. Okay. If you can be true to yourself, and you can have boundaries, and you can do this in a calm, cool, collected manner, which is really loving yourself in a way and being compassionate with the conversation, but being able to say no, being able to say what you're actually really feeling, okay? And not worry about the other person's feelings, because the other person, if they have a problem with it, can call their therapist. Then you can start uncovering your true self, putting your mask down, and embracing what the child wanted more than anything. That's all the child wanted, was authenticity. And what we do in parenting, unfortunately, is instead of them being a child, we have them doing childhood. Okay. Instead of allowing them the authenticity to cry and be that child growing up in a safe, caregiving way, we tell them that have a role. I became the hero. I had to make my family happy. I was like dancing back and forth. So dropping the mask, okay, to find your authentic self and being vulnerable is where it's at. Okay. Being your authentic self is the ultimate secret to happiness in life. It's also the ultimate secret in caregiving. And also it's the ultimate secret in seeking out self-awareness, which is literally what and how can I be proactive? And how are these words going to impact the person in front of me? And what is my role here? And how can I meet this person halfway? So finding self-awareness is really what psychology is all about, but it's also what your journey's about. It's your own psychology, okay? Psychology is all about awareness, transformation, and self-love. And I think what we have done in psychology, unfortunately, maybe is adopted too much from the East, to saying that if you stand on a mountain, an hour a day in Tibet, you'll be enlightened. And that's the goal. Well, enlightenment is not the goal. Okay. Enlightenment, that's not the real world. Being authentic is the goal. Being authentic is having your energy back. Being authentic means you're not going to waste somebody else's time, nor your own in the moment. Being authentic is you're not going to have to be a role player in somebody else's Broadway play. Okay. Finding self-awareness is really a slow process, and you're slowly peeling off the many layers of yourself. That's why it's a journey here. That's why I'm asking you to look at self-awareness as a process. At WellMed, we're trying to peel the onion, okay, for our employees. And to be self-aware is also to create a more psychologically safe environment. When you're self-aware, you allow the other person to speak. You actually listen to what the other person says in case they have innovative ideas for you that you have a blind spot with. It doesn't mean that you shut down and fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. It means you're aware, you're equal. Let's face it, I always say burnout is when one person works harder than the other. I think family caregiving is the same way. Often as family caregivers, we create called learned helplessness in our loved ones. And we work too hard, and we don't allow them to really do the things they could, even if they have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or Lewy body or some neurological issue. Everybody has the ability in that state, any state, to do certain things and have self-esteem, whatever it is. So meeting somebody halfway is literally the antidote to burnout. So this is your journey that you're beginning today, the journey of self-awareness. And it begins not outside some esoteric place, not on the mountain in Tibet, even though that's a very cool place, I'm sure, to be. This begins with your neurological system, okay? The mind's first step to self-awareness, and Evelyn was saying this earlier, has to be through your body. Yep, not your mind. Why is that? Your mind will get you in trouble. My mind gets me in trouble. Mind can do anything. It can blame, project, deflect, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. The mind can do anything, unfortunately. But the body keeps the score. That's a great book by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. So your body literally is your neurological system, right? So the journey of self-awareness is to honor, embrace your neurological system. Okay, when I mentioned to you the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that executive functioning, that's the part of a caregiver that says, what can I learn here? Instead of shutting down to reactive mode, okay, because your limbic system and your emotions are flooded, right? Which is I am I loved. Or instead of going to the brainstem, the monkey mind, am I safe? Boy, I got to cover up. It's survival mode. I want you to understand that your neurological system is asking you to balance your life, that your emotions is your limbic system, but you can't shut down. What trauma does, and complex trauma does it too, it shuts down your prefrontal cortex. So that curiosity, that what can I learn? How can I meet in the middle is not there. That's why our journey of self-awareness begins with our neurological system. So how do we get out of it? How do we deal with our neurological system? How do we do this? How do we embrace the shadow side, which is something we don't look at, okay? Well, Evelyn was talking about it before a little bit when she was talking about Tara Brach's work, okay? Self-awareness is the path to inner peace, okay? My hero, well back when, Carl Jung, said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. And who looks outside dreams and who looks inside awakens. So realize that the journey in caregiving is not how well you take care of your loved one. The journey is how you develop your own self-awareness, which is your path to inner peace. And that is the way we retrain our brain. That is the interventions that we use in psychology that are called emotional regulators. Okay, that is really the EMDR, which is the great trauma reduction techniques of Dr. Francis Shapiro. That is Pilates, that is yoga, that is going out and walking, taking care of yourself with vitamin D, all these things, even praying, okay, whether it's Buddha, Moses, Allah, Jesus, whoever, what you pray to or for or whatever your path. I think all paths lead to the righteous. Praying itself is a neurological way to inner peace and self-awareness. It's how we retrain our brain. Okay. So I'm so happy you guys showed up, because now you understand what we're battling here. We're battling the childhood complex PTSD. We're battling in some way the tattooed thought, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. But now you're understanding that if you're embracing yourself here, if you're going to take your oxygen first, if you really want to find true resilience in the caregiving process instead of energy depletion, then you've got to start putting together your own treatment plan, right? And I'm going to ask you to be your own doctors here. So if we use Dr. Daniel Goleman's work in the Emotional Intelligence Institute today, I'm going to start talking about how do we develop self-awareness. Well, if the path is inner peace, right? And the path is through our neurological system, okay? I want you to start thinking, and I'm not sure we have any time to do this. Maybe if we had a few, I'd open it up to discuss anybody's emotional regulators. But as I go through the 30,000 people at WellMed and find out what there is, some people fish, some people crochet, some people meditate, some people pray, some people literally, go and find, I have rock and roll. Maybe behind me, you see that. I go and listen to rock and roll or go to a rock and roll concert. Why is that? Because that's an emotional regulator for myself. And it's a social regulator to be around people who are not toxic, who have the same intentions. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous or Codependency Anonymous works. The 12 steps are the emotional regulator. The groups, which is how we as communities come around and get safety, is the meetings. So Dr. Gabor Mate said, look, we get screwed up in relationships initially in our lives called childhood. We also have to heal through healthy relationships later as an adult. That's where we find self-awareness, is the way we interact neurologically. So I'll say, don't get around people that dominate you, bully you, toxic people, because you'll go always into fight, flight, freeze. So we can always discuss it later. And hopefully you're thinking in your mind right now what your emotional regulator is. But I want you to make sure, whatever it is, I'd like you to start putting it into your schedule of the day. As a caregiver, I don't care what time of day it is, you might want to do breath work at 9, you may want to do gratitude journaling at 12, you may want to walk, around the water at 3, you may want to do Pilates at 5, in between taking care of your loved one. I'm not discounting the real deal here, but I want to make sure as you do this with people who meet you halfway, people who love you, people who support you, people who don't beat you down, people who compromise. And I want you to start nurturing those people in your life, okay? Isolation for us as family caregivers is our worst enemy. I want you to go to groups like a Caregiver SOS in Texas, or I want you to call your hospital system and find groups to go there. I'd like you to go to Codependency Anonymous, because there are groups there. If you are able to hang around healthy people who are actually in the same thing, that's great. But if you isolate or hang around people that are overwhelming and bullies and lie to you and control you, you never can get well. You can't put the mask down. So I want you to understand the first toxic relationship we ever have in our life is with ourselves, okay? And that's today, as you're looking at self-awareness and Dr. Goleman's sort of concentration of it, and its ability as family caregivers to allow us to have a healthier life. I want you to understand that it's going to ask you, as you do this path, to communicate better with yourself. If parenting is fair, consistent, and available, I want you to adopt yourself and be fair, consistent, and available. If you're not improving the way you'd like, it's natural. It's 3 steps forward and 2 backwards. Have forgiveness, have acceptance, okay? What I don't want you to do is be around people who don't connect with you. What I don't want you to do is treat yourself and control yourself and beat yourself up. I don't want you at all to do this, because the only way we're going to make this journey is of self-awareness is to accept the vulnerable side of us. And to do that, we have to have other people in our lives who also will accept that vulnerability. So at WellMed, I always say the best leaders we have are the ones who are vulnerable and who can get to the other side. I'm an AARP daddy with a 12-year-old. And so people ask me, what do you do? I say, I cry in front of my daughter. Why? Because I think she knows that I'm resilient enough to get to the other side. That pain is inevitable, but suffering is not, okay? So understand as a caregiver, you're vulnerable. This is a part to self-awareness. This is a part of putting the fight, flight, freeze down. Do these emotional regulators. Finding this inner peace is actually an action step. It's not going to come to you. As I said, you can't read yourself into it, but realize you're beautiful because you have a ton of flaws. Okay, forgive yourself for that. You're fearless because we've been afraid. We may be afraid right now. Be kind to yourself. Have boundaries. This is critical for us. Remember, we say we don't say no. Look up Brené's work. I've often said this to you. Brené Brown says it very understandably. She's on YouTube. She's everywhere. But when we fail to set boundaries and hold ourselves and others accountable, we feel used and mistreated. Okay? Ourselves too. So coaching ourselves means we keep promises to ourselves. I'm just asking you to start the road of self-awareness is bound through your body, through your neurological system. Okay, as you set the mask down, I'm giving you prescriptions how to do that. Why? Because your loved one you're caring for needs you to. If you are not the change that you want to see from them or this world, okay, you're going to create a much more anxious person across from you. When I wrote the book, Take Your Oxygen First, look, I was very much real because I'm a recovering codependent, and I realized caregivers often would not do that work, take care of themselves first. So I would always say, look, if you do take care of yourself, your loved one won't be as fearful when they're going through chronic terminal acute illness. They themselves will feel better. So guess what? You could be the antidote for their fear. So you got to be the change you want to see in this world. And starting this road to self-awareness is really how to stress reduce yourself, how to self-soothe. Okay, I'm going to do some breath work with you. So things like breath work, wrapping yourself in layers of blankets, caring for yourself. You can visualize a calm place. It's a grounding technique, right? You can do all this stuff, okay? You can get into the bath, do something, that keeps you, take a warm shower bath, whatever it is, you're actually parenting yourself in the manner that you would have wanted to be parented as a child. Okay, this is an experiential journey. To find self-awareness, you do have to be in touch with your body. If you're feeling anxiety, I'd love for you to do the breath work I'm going to teach you. Or I'd love for you to do yoga. I'd like you to go do some exercise or whatever. I'd like for you also to explore in the world of depression and anxiety, things like, I don't know, TMS, transmagnetic cranial sort of work, or I'd like you to explore trauma work called soul collage. We're actually even learning new things around psychoactive medication now with the brain and trauma. But the longest journey, my dear caregiver, you ever make is from your head to your heart. And if you're going to look to self-soothe and you're going to look to change your mind and find self-awareness, okay, then you're going to have to start trusting this process of you, that you've probably have tabled yourself because you think you have to take care of somebody, and that's got to be the prominent thing. Well, self-awareness is reducing your anxiety. Self-awareness is stress, reducing your stress. It's reducing your anger. It's being here now. Okay, it's not being in the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. It's not in the anxiety of tomorrow or the fears from yesterday. It's finding the energy. This is why energy comes to us when we're in that self-aware mode, because we're in the moment. Anything else sucks the energy out. Anything else is like a vampire. So, you know what? I'm going to actually open it up if I can before I do this breath work. And maybe Evelyn, I'm not sure if anybody who's on the call can throw out a concept of how they emotionally regulate. This would be a great time. I emotionally regulate, and I obviously gave up my thing by telling you it's rock and roll. Okay, I walk, sometimes I'll work out. I'm not that great. I'll do a lot of breath work. Okay, but I put this in my schedule, and I don't open up for a couple of minutes. Does anybody fish, crochet, hunt, walk, go out to coffee? I don't know. Is it possible? If not, Evelyn, I'll keep going.
We have one person, Beeb said prayer.
Prayer is, listen, like I said, this is not a religious conversation, guys. I'm not pushing one on the other, but all paths lead to the righteous. As I mentioned to you, whether it's Jesus, Moses, Buddha, or Allah, the transformational power of prayer is there. We have seen studies where the prayer does neurologically shift the mind. It takes us to a place where we deal with fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, where we become more present in the moment. So yes, it does. Who else? I'm seeing it
We've got a
popping up.
couple: art, journaling, visit the beach, making the first hour mine. Another
Fantastic.
one, crochet, walk, hike. Another one, dance.
Oh, dance. I have a clinic administrator. I make sure I put it on her prescription. She's so burned out now. She does the rumba and goes out 3 times a week, and she's gotten so much better. And it's so cool. And I saw somebody who said crochet. So I have a person in our call center right now who I went to the supervisor, and she gets calls from our patients, and she didn't want to do breath work. And I said, that's cool. What do you want to do? She says, I crochet. So I went to her supervisor. I said, would you let her crochet for a month? And sure enough, she did. And her satisfaction with the job went right up. And everybody loved talking to her. Why? She had an emotional regulator. So I'm looking at art. Oh, art is fabulous. Journaling. Wow. Journaling, I want to especially tell you right now, as you do the self-awareness part, there's a beauty of getting these emotions out on a piece of paper. Okay. I don't care if you don't have to mail it. Okay. I would say put it into the God file, which is the garbage can, if you will. God file means that you let God on it. But journaling is fabulous. You get in touch with yourself. You know, you don't need it for anybody else to read. That's the codependent piece. You need it for you. Visiting the beach, is fabulous. What grounding techniques is all about is putting our feet into the sand of life, right? That is a grounding technique, a trauma reduction technique. And so that to me it's so great to do. If you're near a beach, I want you to all to go put your feet in the sand. I also, it's interesting. I'm going to comment on organizing and cleaning. I think it's great. Obviously, I think if we could do it at WellMed, we'd be great. Always things in balance, right? I do have people that clean incessantly, who detach and disassociate and clean. And the more they're kind of anxious, the more they clean. But always look for emotional regulators as balance. You balance, right? And so I like that what Betty says. How are most of these different than self-isolating? Self-isolating, y'all, is being lonely, okay? It's not being alone. I want you to become comfortable sometimes when you're alone. Self-isolating is a conscious, and I'm going to address this one clearly on neurologically too. Self-isolating is something we do not prescribe in any way. Like there are crocheting clubs, like there are meetups, and I'd like you to look at those. And there's actually dance groups out there. There's fabulous caregiver support groups, okay? So any emotional regulators are great to do to calm your nervous system down. However, I'm so glad that actually Betty brought this up because it's such a great question. I want you to understand that human beings evolved, not because we're survival of the fittest. We evolved because neurologically we developed in communities. So we do need others, okay? So what I want you to balance is emotional self-regulation. Listen, we're going to be alone a lot of times. People just aren't going to be on the journey with us. We got to take care of our loved one, take care of ourselves, take care of 500 different things. But I want you to realize what I said before. We kind of got trauma from childhood by a relationship that wasn't great, sometimes with our parents, right? So we got to get out of this by healthy relationships. Please don't self-isolate. If you can, go out and do this with other people. And they have to be people that meet you halfway. Okay, yoga is one of the best ways to deal with, and Tai Chi, oh my Lord, have mercy. I've got a friend who finally went into Tai Chi and did lifestyle medicine. And he just, his whole life, he was a doctor. It came around. Gardening, just getting in touch with gardening. Aromatherapy, wow, this is so good. Rowing is great. I've just started picking it up myself. This is how we stimulate the body. Do this with people. Do it on your own. It's a balancing process. But just like Nike says, and Nike's the god of success or victory, I think, and that they say, just do it, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to just do right now is what we're going to do is some breath work. Oh, sound sessions. Do not forget about that. I'm so glad that Amy brought this up. So trauma is affected in our body sometimes through our middle ear, and sound sessions and music. That's why when you see meditation, you see people doing om, om. The vibration of that literally is vagus nerve work. which we're going to do right now. So Amy, you're 100% right. Look for sound sessions. Go put in, I'd like you to get the app Insight Timer. You know, Evelyn is so inspirational. She starts this whole thing off with Tara Brock's work. Now, Tara has a methodology called RAIN, which is is very cool. We'll do a whole presentation around that, but it's a way to deal with anxiety and stuff. But Tara also loves sound, and Tara is, now there's a lot of this is Buddhist and some of this is not. If you want to see something not Buddhist and you don't want to get into that world, go to John Kabat-Zinn's Mindful Based Stress Reduction, MBSR. There's so many things we can do that is self-aware work. Now, I'm going to give you breath work right now, because I think as I work with cops, firemen, and family caregivers especially, breath work is something we can summon in the moment. If we're feeling dysregulated, okay, all those fabulous emotional regulators, and thank you so much, all of you, for throwing those out. They're so cool. I want you to also to understand that we can actually take ourselves in the moment from breath work, from a despair, hopeless feeling to an encouraging, hopeful feeling. Breath work is something you need no license, no certification for. Breath work is only what human beings can do to shift the chemistry of our body. No other species can do it in less than 80 seconds. Okay. If you're feeling disengaged and, like Betty said, self-isolating, and you're feeling like ups and downs, are you going through loss and grief and the roller coaster with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's The Stages of Death and Dying, which are never stages, they're coming out of all places. Breath work is the way to go. Breath work will allow you to ground you on 2 feet. It allows you to change the chemistry of your body. Yes, it does. And it gives control back to you. Now, it's vagus nerve work. All of this, okay, self-awareness work is vagus nerve. I want you to, if you want to Google it, go to Facebook. This is a great body of work. Everything you all mentioned as emotional regulators are vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, the word vagus comes from vagabond. It's the longest nerve in your body. It goes from the cortex of your brain through healing organs into your gut. Okay, that's incredible sort of way that in any given moment, you can actually calm your vagus nerve. You also build up the temporal lobes at the same time of resilience. Okay, that's the beauty of vagus nerve work. So breath work itself is that. It's a grounding technique. It's like what B says, when your feet are in the ground, in the sand, okay? But I want you experientially to know that any emotional regulator is going to work well in the 80 seconds. I'd love you to learn breath work, because as I think you're all what I call first responders. In fact, I call family caregivers family first responders. So my work with cops and firemen or people running into burning homes when others are running out. Well, you do the same thing every day, right? You're like family first responders. So breath work works well. As caregivers, it really will shift your brain response. You can be your own trauma therapist. And that's what I'm asking you, to find self-awareness. I need you to start unlocking the power of your vagus nerve. It's your self-healing. Yes, you can come see me. I see my therapist every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. She's a trauma therapist, but you can be your own trauma therapist, okay? You really can. You can unlock the power of the vagus nerve. You can start coordinating and organizing it in your schedule. You know, as soon as you see the doctor, your loved one has to go to a doctor, something's going on, this, that, schedule 80 seconds. That's it, 80 seconds of some grounding technique. So I'm going to show you to you, those who have been here before probably are black belts. If you don't want to do it, because I'm a hypnotherapist and I believe your breath is your independent autonomy and your agency, do something else. You could do prayer, you could do meditation, stay silent, or you can go to a safe place you once were, touch it, feel it, and smell it, okay? I go to a place in some beach in Greece, okay? These are grounding techniques. You see that? It's your feet in the sand. So here's how we do it. Those who don't know, Dr. Andy Weil brought it to all healthcare providers, and so it's perfect for family caregivers. Okay, when I ask you to close your eyes, I'll ask you to breathe in. You'll breathe in through your nostrils for 4 seconds. It's cool, it's refreshing. You'll keep it in your mind for up to 7 seconds. You can picture butterflies and rainbows if you want guided images, or just stay silent. But when you exhale, I want you to exhale loudly like this. The exhalation is what triggers your vagus nerve response. And that'll be just for 8 seconds. So it's rough. You got to listen to my voice now. But guess what? After this, I want you to go to YouTube, put 478 in, and put Andrew Weil, or just put Weil. He's great, and he'll do it for 2 minutes. And you can continue to do it during the most difficult times. And I'm going to tell you, the more you do this, the more self-awareness. Why? Because the more proactive your brain will become. Okay, so let's all try it together. Those who do know already how to do it, you've heard it before. Again, if you don't want to do it, I've given you an alternative. Let's all close our eyes. Let's put our feet on the ground. If you have shoes on, feel the floor through your shoes. And if you're barefooted, feel the floor through your feet. Okay, with your back upright with respect, let's just do 4, 7, 8 simply 4 times, okay? All right, let's breathe in now through our nostrils for 4 seconds. Keep it, swish it around for up to 7 seconds. Blow out with passion for 8. Breathe in the calmness again for 4. Keep it, swish it for 7. Blow out with gusto for 8. Breathe in the calmness again for 4 seconds. Keep it, swish it for 7. Blow out with passion for 8. Last time. Breathe in the calmness for 4 seconds. Keep it, swish it for 7. Now, what anxiety you're feeling for 8. Eyes still closed, caregivers. Feet on the ground. Go inside your body now. Just for a moment, scan it. You've shifted the chemistry of your body, literally, in less than 80 seconds. If you're dysregulated, you're probably much more self-aware of your body. You've actually created a hormone called oxytocin, which connects to your neurotransmitters. You've been able to do that in less than 80 seconds. So the rhetorical question is, in your self-care, are you worth 80 seconds to yourself and your self-care? When you're ready, open your eyes, come back. Understand that what you've done is an act of self-compassion. Now, to find self-awareness, literally, you have to provide yourself a moment of self-compassion. It can change your day. And a string of moments just like this can change the course of your life. These are the self-soothing emotional regulators that you all put in. This is exactly what the new brain and the new brain science is about. Okay, this is how we find self-awareness. So today's moral story of this whole self-awareness story is stop wearing your mask. Start offering your authentic self. Start doing this necessary work to calm the brain down, to calm the fight, flight, freeze. And just know you need to take your oxygen first, caregivers. Really be the change you want to see in all others and know that better things are coming. They are. So keep calm, and just breathe. Evelyn, it's all yours.
Oh, whoa. Thank you all so much for that feedback. It was wonderful. And Dr. Jamie, you always do a fabulous job. I know I feel better.
Thank you
I
so
love
much.
one person put in, call a friend, and that's one of my techniques.
Wow, you know, the friendship thing, I can't stress it enough because I saw the self-isolation. And since we do cure ourselves, literally cure eventually in our lives through regulating with relationships neurologically, remember self-awareness through the body. If you develop and be very selective, a friend is somebody who meets you halfway. Somebody is a friend that bear witness to your pain, a friend that has your back, and a friend will be there, but they're 50-50, right? Be kind to yourself, develop your friendships, and they will neurologically be there for you to develop self-awareness. So that's a great way to end this. Be kind to yourselves.
Well put. So, excuse me one second. I want to tell everybody, and I think most of you know this, but in a couple of days, you'll get the post-session questionnaire with the resources. I've tried to do my best because Dr. Jamie talks fairly fast. If you have any questions, you can always call our customer service representative. And if you're not registered, somebody gave you the Zoom link or you got the phone number from somebody, please call our customer service representative. Her number is 866-390-6491. And she will get you registered, and that will get you the post-session questionnaire with the resources from Dr. Jamie, as many as I could get. You will also get our monthly calendar as a little extra added bonus on my infomercial here. And we ask that you fill out that questionnaire seriously, because we always try to improve. We hope that you will help us do that. And I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much for what you do as caregivers. Thank you, Dr. Jamie, for all
Thank
that
you.
you are and what you give to people. And I would like to thank the Wellman Charitable Foundation, who does such a brilliant job of getting great speakers, of doing the podcasts, of running the SOS centers, the clinics, and just, taking care of all of us who are caregivers. And with that, I am going to stop the recording. And I thank you all so much for your participation today. It was great. Bye, Dr. Jamie.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Be kind to yourselves.